Zoe invites Rasha to her mom's wedding, Frankie wants to get Jonah back, and Maya has a plan in the penultimate episode of Degrassi Next Class Season 3. And welcome to another edition of Degrassi Corner, and today we are looking at the 9th episode of Degrassi Next Class Season 3, #woke. So, since the last time we saw Zoe, when she got caught by her mom making out with Rasha, basically everything's been kind of cool, like her mom hasn't blown up at her or anything. So Zoe thinks that it's okay for her to invite Rasha to her mom's wedding. However, when she brings that up to her mom, Miss Rivas says no, and we actually find out that Miss Rivas thinks that her daughter's just going through some sort of phase. She doesn't actually believe that Zoe is gay. Zoe's tired of feeling like her mom doesn't think she's gay simply because she's super feminine, so Zoe decides to wear a tuxedo to her mom's wedding. We see this really awkward scene where Zoe introduces Rasha to her mom, and her mom has this look on her face like, "Girl, I'm your ass when we get home." But Miss Rivas, she smiles through it and she doesn't really say anything, and she just lets it slide for now. However, a little bit later, Miss Rivas, she can't hold her tongue any longer when she sees her daughter and Rasha kissing at the reception. Miss Rivas yells at Zoe, calling her selfish and yelling at her because she brought Rasha to the wedding after she'd said no, and then Zoe snaps back and says, "You don't accept me for who I am," and then Zoe basically gets kicked out of the wedding. But as they're leaving, we also see that Rasha is mad as well. She's upset because Zoe invited her to the wedding even after her mom said no. Rasha doesn't like the fact that Zoe put her in a position to be hated for her sexuality in public, because she talks about the story how back in Syria, her aunt actually called the cops on her to report her for being gay. So it's pretty easy to see why Rasha would be upset by this situation. Rasha says she doesn't trust Zoe anymore, and she just leaves Zoe there and just walks away. And then in the end, we see this really sad scene with Zoe. She's at the dot sitting there alone, and then Grace comes in and says, "You know, you can stay at my place for as long as you want." Yeah, it was messed up of Zoe to drag Rasha into this. However, a very underutilized aspect of Degrassi nowadays is when we see kids trying to find love and acceptance from their parents. Degrassi was really successful when they did this with Miles' storyline with him and his dad. And it's really heartbreaking to see this with Zoe and her mom, because for as long as Zoe's been on the show, she's been on the show about 5 seasons now, all she's ever wanted is to be loved and accepted by other people. Now on to the next plot in this episode. Maya, she's officially diagnosed with depression. However, she just absolutely refuses to accept her diagnosis. And while she's doing some of her exercises that her doctor gave her at home with her mom, she goes into a fit of rage and she actually breaks her mom's mirror. A little bit later, we see that Degrassi alum Katie Matlin is back. Mom has called in reinforcements because she doesn't know what to do with Maya, and at this point she's feeling like she's failed as a parent. Katie tries to engage Maya, tries to say, "Hey, what's going on? Let's hang out, let's, talk." And Maya doesn't want to do that right now, and she just sort of abruptly leaves. And we see that she ends up going to the dot, to an ATM, and she withdraws a bunch of money. Also, while she's there, she tells Esme to take care of Zig for her. And then we see when she goes back, she actually goes back home, and we see that she's not only fixed the mirror, she's also sort of set up a girls' night for her and her mom and her sister. She tells her mom and Katie that she knows she's been a burden lately, but she has this plan, and she's gonna make everything all right. And at this point in the story, you start to see where things are headed down a very, very, very dark path. Then at the very end of the episode, they've had their girls' night, they're about to go to bed. We see Maya go into the bathroom, and she fills this tiny little container with a bunch of prescription pills. And as she's smiling, you can assume that she is planning to kill herself. I don't really know what to say about this storyline at this point. It's scary, it's personal, and it feels very real and raw. This is what Degrassi, when people talk about Degrassi going there and feeling like it's real, this storyline is what they're talking about. We've seen both suicide and mental illness on this show many times, but nothing like this. Not to the point where we're seeing a character who is not only planning their suicide, but they are genuinely happy that they're going to kill themselves because they see that as their only way of fixing things. Maya said it several times throughout this season that she's trying to fix things, she's tried her best, and nothing's working, and she feels like killing herself is the only way to make things work. And finally, Frankie, she wants Jonah back, so she's currently reading some sort of relationship self-help book, and instead of trying it out on herself at first, she decides she's going to try it out and help fix Hunter and Yael's relationship. So Hunter's got his face range open, he walks away for a minute, so she jumps onto his account, and Hunter and Yael, they're currently I guess sort of on an unofficial break, and she decides to fix the relationship by saying that Hunter is in love with Yael. Later, Hunter, of course, obviously finds out that Frankie is the one who told Yael that he loves her, so he decides to turn around and do the exact same thing to Jonah. So then Frankie, she freaks out, she feels like she has to go find him and explain what the heck happened. So she actually goes all the way to Miss Rivas' wedding to find him, and he learns about what Hunter did, and she tells him that even though Hunter was the one that typed "I love you," she actually does love Jonah. Then Jonah, because he's kind of busy at the moment, he's actually DJing Miss Rivas' wedding. He tells Frankie that he will talk to her later. However, later doesn't actually come. Frankie's getting a little freaked out because she hasn't heard from Jonah yet, so she logs into his Face Range account again to see his messages and to see what he might be up to. And while she's looking at his messages, guess who randomly shows up at her house? It's Jonah with a bouquet of flowers, and he's looking to get back together with her, but the moment that he sees that she's hacked into his account, he's like, I trusted you, I gave you a pass with all this craziness you've been doing recently, and I'm done. And to be honest, it's probably for the best, because Frankie, she knows that she's just a completely different person when she's in a relationship. We thought she might have spent some time working on that while they were on their break, but apparently she didn't. She's still very insecure. And one thing I liked is this is the kind of storyline where they could have done this all in one episode basically, but they stretched this out over the course of the entire season, so it felt a little bit more natural. And that's gonna do it for this episode of Degrassi Corner. We have one episode left in Degrassi Next Class Season 3. Make sure you leave your comments on this episode, #woke, in the comments section below. And do not forget to like, favorite, and subscribe.